Hello, my dear students. Welcome back to the revision series. In the previous session, we have completed revising SA 200 series of the standard, where we have revised four standards specifically. So we are done with SA 240, which is talking about the responsibilities of the auditor regarding fraud while conducting audit of the financial statements. SA 250 we are done, which is talking about what are the auditor's responsibilities regarding laws and regulations while conducting audit of the financial statements. Then we have spoke about SA 260, which is talking about communication with those charged with governance. Then we are done with SA 299, which is relating to the concept of the joint audit of financial statements. So now what we will do is we'll take up one small chapter, one small topic called internal audit. We'll try to complete the revision of the small chapter, internal audit. Very simple chapter, very easy chapter. Along with that, there is also one related standard regarding this internal audit, which is SA 610. So in this video, our prime focus is going to be regarding completion of the concept of internal audit along with the related standard SA 610. Both we will try to complete in this session. So without any delay further, let me jump into the discussion. So what is this concept of the internal audit? First, we will try to understand what exactly is this concept of internal audit. See, till now we spoke about various matters related to audit. So we spoke about audit evidence, we spoke about audit procedures, we spoke about audit reporting, we spoke about various other scenarios like risk assessment, internal control. So all these things we have seen till now. So whatever concepts relating to audit, whatever we have covered till now, those are actually relating to the external audit. Whatever concepts relating to audit we have discussed till now, those concepts we have actually understood from the perspective of an external audit. So first of all, what is external audit? The audit which is required as per some law or regulation. Those audits which are actually required by some law or regulations, those audits mainly we call them as external audits. Like for example, if there is a company, if there is a company and that is incorporated under Companies Act 2013. As per the Companies Act 2013, the company has to undergo something called company audit. They have to undergo something called company audit, which we can also call it a statutory audit, where a external person, a person outside of the organization, an external person will come and verify the client's books of accounts, give the opinion and go away. Yes or no? And also you can say tax audit. The tax audit which is required under Income Tax Act, that is also an example of external audit, where an external person will come and will verify our books of accounts, will verify our tax computations, whether we made a correct amount of depositing of the tax or not. That we will verify. That is also one example of external audit. So whatever concepts we have discussed till now, those are actually from the perspective of external audit. So see, there is already a concept called external audit. We have discussed so many things regarding this. Now, what is this internal audit? When we already have an audit mechanism in the form of external audit, what led to the introduction of this concept of internal audit once again? Why this double audit? Why this unnecessary complication? Let me try to simplify that. So first we will try to mainly focus on the differences between internal audit and external audit. So to understand the differences, first we will try to understand what exactly happens in the external audit. We'll try to understand with the help of one company audit scenario. See, basically, take for example, there is a company Infosys. So if the company audit, see definitely since Infosys is a company registered under Companies Act 2013, statutory audit must happen. So take for example, Infosys has appointed Deloitte, an audit firm, an external audit firm, something who is external, who has nothing to do with the Infosys. So they are not a shareholder, they are not part of management, some external person, Deloitte, they have appointed. So now Deloitte they have appointed as a company auditor, as an external auditor. Now what this Deloitte will do? Do you think Deloitte will come to the Infosys every day to do the verification? No. So number one, there is no continuous interaction. We can't expect the external auditors to come daily and verify the transactions of the client company. That we can't expect. Number two, and one more thing. So Deloitte is someone who is an external person. Deloitte is someone who is an external person. He will only verify, he is only concerned with financial statements and books of accounts. Yes, little bit of internal controls he will be concerned, and he will also verify only those internal controls which are related to the financial statements. Accounting controls only external auditors are more focused. External auditor, what is the main scope of work? Number one, once in a while he will come. In case of big listed companies, once in a quarter they will come. For every 3 months, some 10 days, 15 days, auditors will come, verify the transactions and books of accounts on sampling basis. And external auditors are more concerned only with the financial statements and accounting controls. Yes or no? And these external auditors, they will report to whom? To the stakeholders, basically shareholders. External auditors are going to report to the shareholders of the company. Number four, these people are going to verify the transactions on sampling basis. Little bit of verification they do. Little bit of, very little bit of verification they do. Hardly 10 to 15% of the sample sizes they are going to verify. And one more thing here, These external auditors, their responsibility is only to express an opinion whether the financial statements are giving a true and fair view. What external auditors will do, they will verify financial statements, books of accounts, and only they will leave their comment whether those financial statements are giving a true and fair view or not. They have nothing to do with giving the suggestions to the client company. They will not give suggestions. They have nothing to do with value addition. They have nothing to do with developing the client company. They have nothing to do with making the client company better. So basically, external audit is just one compliance mechanism. What is external audit? It is just one compliance mechanism. Once in a while, an external person will come, verify the transactions on sampling basis, will be concerned only with the financial statements and books of accounts, and he will only express his opinion. He has nothing to do with the development of the company. He has nothing to do with giving suggestions of the company. We can't even expect also whether the company is making profits, making losses, what we can do to improve the profits of the company, what we can do to improve the overall organization of the client. These are all not matters of concerns of the external auditor. He has nothing to do with all these aspects. So that's why what industry thought is, okay, external audit is just one compliance mechanism. In big organizations, there is more robust audit mechanism needed, which will overcome the problems of the external audit. So the problems of external audit, as I've told, there is no continuous interaction. So industry thought there should be one more audit mechanism where there will be continuous interaction with the client. Someone who is coming to the client on a regular basis and verifying the transactions on a regular basis. Some continuous interaction of the audit is required. Number two, external auditors are only concerned with financial statements and books of accounts. We need one more robust audit mechanism where the auditor is going to concentrate even on operational aspects also, like production, quality, HR. So we need one more audit mechanism which just doesn't concentrate only on financial statements and books of accounts. We want some audit mechanism where the auditor will be concerned with the financial matters also. At the same time, he will also be concerned with operational aspects also. And number three, we need an audit mechanism where the reporting is not going to the stakeholders, to the external person. Reporting should happen to the management. Management should know what is going wrong in their organization, where they have to focus more, where they have to less focus, in which areas they have to implement more internal controls. Like management also needs some reporting mechanism. So we need one audit mechanism where the auditor is not going to report to the external persons, he is going to report to the management only. And we want one more robust mechanism where the auditor will verify the much more detailed verification. External auditor is doing only random verification, very limited amount of verification he is doing. So industry thought there is need for such an audit where there will be much more detailed information. And most important thing, external auditor is not at all concerned with giving suggestions and improving the organization. We need such an audit mechanism where the auditor is going to find out weaknesses in the internal controls, weaknesses in the organization, weaknesses in the operation, and he will also give suggestions for improvement. What he's also going to do? He's also going to give suggestions for improvement. Such a robust audit mechanism is required. So this is what the industry thought. External audit alone is not enough for big companies. We need one more robust audit mechanism which will overcome all the problems of the external audit. Like there will be continuous interaction. The auditor is going to concentrate on operational aspects, and he will report to the management. He will do much more detailed verification, and also he will work for overall development of the organization. And the kind of audit which fulfills all these kind of things is internal audit. This is what basically we call it as internal audit. Sir, is internal audit mandatory for all the companies? No. As per the Companies Act 2013, Section 138 has given applicable criteria. Only those companies which fulfill that criteria, those companies are only required to make an appointment of internal auditor. For other companies, it is not mandatory. It is their voluntary choice. But internal audit is not mandatory for every organization. There are only a handful of companies which fulfill criteria given under Section 138. Only those companies are required to appoint the internal auditor. So we will see what is that criteria. We'll go to the material and we'll see what is the criteria. So first of all, let us have look once at the definition of the internal audit. So if you see here, as defined in framework governing internal audit provides independent assurance on effectiveness of internal control. So see here, they are all together changing the definition. In the external audit definition, they say auditor will do independent examination of financial information. Their financial information is only scope. But here, if you see, they are telling internal auditor is providing assurance on effectiveness of internal controls, risk management, proper risk management in the organization, and to enhance governance and improve, enhance in the sense to improve the governance, to improve the overall management of the organization and help the organization to achieve their objectives. All these things are not there in the case of external audit. They will simply say you have to express the opinion, that's all, your responsibility will come to an end. But see the scope of the internal auditor. He is responsible for improving the effectiveness of internal controls. He should help the organization for better risk management, and also he should enhance the governance and help the organization to achieve its objectives. This is what I basically call it as value addition. There should be value addition. Clear? So, and also we will try to have a look at the differences between external audit versus internal audit. So there will be one small question here. So if you see, so what are the differences between internal audit versus external audit? If you see here, who will perform internal audit? Internal audit will be performed by internal audit function within the organization. So either the company, some big companies, what they do is they have their own staff, they have their own employees to whom they will give the role of internal auditors. And also some organizations, they will not appoint their own employees for doing internal audit function. They can also go for external auditor. But in the case of external audit, only outside part, a firm or an auditor who is not a part of the management, not a part of the organization, an external person will come and do the external audit. Whereas internal audit, even internal employees also can do. Next point of difference, examination. What will external auditor examine? External auditor examines accuracy and validity of financial statements. As I have told, external auditor mainly concentrates only on the financial information. But if you see internal auditor, he is going to examine operational aspects, not just financial, operational aspects. In the operational, finance also will come, but beyond finance, he will look after various aspects like production, sales, HR, marketing, internal controls. So all these things also he will examine. Who will appoint internal auditors? Internal auditor will be appointed by audit committee. If there is an audit committee in the company, so that audit committee will make an appointment of internal auditor. If there is no audit committee, board of directors will make an appointment of internal auditor. That means internal people only will do the appointment. But you all are aware, in the case of company, external auditor will be appointed by shareholders of the company, not by the management. Shareholders will make an appointment. Now, who will use the report? In case of external audit, the report will be used by stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, they will be shareholders, creditors, bankers, government. These are the stakeholders for whose purpose external audit will be done. But internal audit report will be used by the management themselves. It will not be given to the external parties. It will be used by management themselves. To whom the report, what kind of reporting will happen? We know in the case of external audit, auditor is going to express an opinion on true and fairness of the financial statements. But in the internal audit is going to report on weaknesses in the internal controls, and even he's going to report on effectiveness of operational aspects. Overall organization is working in a proper way or not, he's going to give a report on effectiveness of operational aspects. But external audit is only giving opinion on true and fair view of the financial statements. So what is the status of the auditor? External auditor will always be a outside person. He should not be an employee. External auditor can never be an employee of the company, but internal auditor can also be an employee of the company. And one more point of difference also I will tell you here. See, the external auditor, whatever company audit, whatever statutory audits that are happening, the guidance for all that external audit comes from standards on audit. The guidance for all the external audit comes from standards on audit. How to do the audit, how to do the reporting. So all that guidance will be given by standards on audit. Like the standards we have seen till now, 240, 250, 700 series. These are all the standards which are talking from the perspective of external audit. When it comes to internal audit, there are altogether different category of standards which we call them as standards on internal audit, SIA. So the guidance for external audits will be given by standards on audit. The guidance for internal audit will be derived from altogether different series of standards which we call them as SIAs, standards on internal audit. So like that dedicated standards are there which are talking about internal audit related matters. So SIA is going to give the guidance regarding internal auditors. Clear? So we have seen what is the meaning of internal audit. How does that differ from external audit? Now I told internal audit is not applicable for all the companies. There is a criteria given. Where that criteria is given? In section 138 of the Companies Act, the criteria is given. So what is that criteria, sir? Let us see. Number one, every listed company. If the company is listed on any stock exchange, no need to look for any criteria. If the company is listed, it is mandatory for that company to make an appointment of internal auditor. In case if the company is a public company but not yet listed, public limited company but not yet listed, in that case it has to fulfill any of these four conditions. Not all, guys. Even if one of that four conditions are fulfilled by a public unlisted company, then also it is mandatory for them to make an appointment of auditor. So what is that criteria for a public company, unlisted public company? So four criteria: 25, 50, 100, 200, twice the previous number. Start with the 25, twice the previous number. So if the company is having outstanding deposits of 25 crores or more at any point of time during the financial year. See, I already told you what is the significance of at any point of time. So if you see here, outstanding deposits of 25 crore rupees or more at any point of time, not as on the balance sheet date, at any point of time during the preceding financial year. That means if you have to decide whether for the financial year 24-25, should I make an appointment of internal auditor or not, if you have to decide it, you have to go to the preceding financial year. 23-24 you have to go. At any point of time throughout this financial year, at any point of time, if the outstanding deposits are 25 crores or more, they have to compulsorily make an appointment of internal auditor for the financial year 24-25. Next, second one is 100. Okay, so once again, if you come back here, 100, 50, 25 to 50. So they say paid up capital. Paid up capital is exceeding, paid up capital is, paid up capital is 50 crores rupees or more. So if you see here, if the company is having a paid up share capital of 50 crores or more during the preceding financial year. So in the last financial year, if the paid up capital is more than 50 crores or more, then also the internal audit will become applicable. Then the next figure is 100. Sir, what is 100, sir? Outstanding loans and borrowings. Outstanding loans and borrowings if they are 100 crores or more. So if you see here, once again, outstanding loans or borrowings from banks or public financial institutions. Same thing as we have seen in Caro. Not all borrowings, only from banks and public financial institutions. If the outstanding loans and borrowings has exceeded 100 crore rupees or more, here also most important thing, at any point of time during the financial year. What they are telling, at any point of time, if the outstanding loans or borrowings only from banks and public financial institutions. And the last one is turnover. If the turnover is 200 crores or more, then also internal audit will become applicable. So all the four conditions should be satisfied, or any one condition. Any one condition. Even if one of the condition gets satisfied by a public company which is unlisted, the internal auditor becomes mandatory. So what are that four conditions? Outstanding deposits of 25 crores or more at any point of time during the financial year. Paid up capital of 50 crores or more during the financial year. Then outstanding loans and borrowings from banks and public financial institutions of 100 crores or more at any point of time during the financial year. Then finally, turnover during the preceding financial year is 100 crores or more. Sir, what if it is a private limited company? What if it is a private company? So if it is a private company, then the act is telling you need to check only two conditions. You have to check the conditions of borrowings, outstanding borrowings of 100 crores or more, and you have to check the condition of turnover of 200 crores or more. That's all. Only these two conditions you have to check. For a public limited company, we have to check any of that four conditions. For a private limited company, check only two conditions. So that's what they say. Every private company having turnover of 200 crores or more during the preceding financial year, or if they're having outstanding loans or borrowings from banks or public financial institutions exceeding 100 crores or more. So this is the applicability criteria. Any company which fulfills this criteria, they are required to mandatorily make an appointment of internal auditor. So what about other entities? That is up to their choice. But if they want, they can appoint. If they don't want, they need not appoint it. And also one more thing here, sir, who can be appointed as an internal auditor? What kind of legal form can be appointed as an internal auditor? An individual person can be appointed as an internal auditor. A partnership firm also can be appointed as an auditor. And most important thing, body corporate also can be appointed as internal auditor. Body corporate other than LLP can't be appointed as a statutory auditor, but body corporate can be appointed as an internal auditor. There is no objection in the Companies Act regarding that. Next one, sir, what about the qualifications, sir? Who can be appointed as an internal auditor? For acting as an external auditor, he must be a practicing chartered accountant. But who can be appointed as an internal auditor? The act says a chartered accountant, whether in practice or not, a cost accountant, whether in practice or not. Not just these two, any other professional as may be decided by the board of directors. Any other professional. So finally, the conclusion is you need not be a chartered accountant, you need not be a cost accountant for becoming internal auditor. The management can appoint any professional for conducting internal audit. That is up to their choice. So that's what they have told. Can be either a chartered accountant, can be either a cost accountant, whether in practice or not, or such other professional as the board of directors or management may deem fit. Sir, who will decide the scope of the internal auditor? What internal auditor should do, what internal auditor should not do, what is included in his scope, what is not included in his scope? Who will decide it? If audit committee is there, audit committee will decide. If audit committee is not there, then board of directors will decide. So if audit committee is there, they will sit with the internal auditors, do the proper consultation, decide what will be the scope of internal auditor. If there is no audit committee, the board of directors will sit with the internal auditors and they will finalize what will be the scope of internal auditor. Next, sir, what are the critical activities of internal auditor? What and all are the major activities which he has to do? So the major activities, the most of the things are going to remain common like external audit only. Like if you see here, the major critical activities are like external audit. He has to plan, scope and determine the methodology of internal audit function. He has to do the planning of the internal audit. He has to decide what will be the scope, and he has to even develop a methodology of how to conduct that internal audit. Then he has to oversee and monitor various audit assignments, their proper planning, execution, and reporting of findings and subsequent closure of reported observations. Obviously, after you have done your internal audit assignment, you have to report your findings. You have to check what observation, you have to give your observations. You need to check how those findings are getting rectified. So those steps you have to follow. So first one, do the proper planning, deciding the scope and all. Second step, you have to monitor and report. Finally, for doing that internal audit function, whatever resources are required, acquire that resources, properly train the internal audit team, develop their staff, develop their talent. Nothing but it is your responsibility to have a strong internal audit team also, which contains competent, capable staff. And then finally, you have to, if required, even you need to get the help of external experts also. Sometimes for doing internal audit, you might require the help of experts like lawyers, actuaries. Even you have to arrange that experts as well. And whatever your observations are there, you have to make sure you are properly communicating with all the key stakeholders, whoever is concerned with the internal audit process, whoever is involved with this internal audit process, whoever is getting benefited by this internal audit process. With all that stakeholders, you have to do timely communications also. And then you have to maintain quality as well, quality and improvement program. Whatever work you are doing, that you have to maintain the quality as well. So these are all the main critical activities of internal auditor. If I have to put it in simple terms: planning, reporting of the findings, then you have to resources, plan, acquire and engage and review the resources, then take the help of experts wherever needed. Communication, proper communication is also required, and quality you have to maintain. And particularly with regarding to accounting function and financial records of the organization, what are the responsibilities of internal auditor? So the previous point talks about overall responsibilities. Now, in the second point, they're specifically talking about with regard to accounting function, with regard to finance department, what internal auditor should do. Same here. First, he will check internal controls, whether the client is having proper internal control system in the area of accounts, like proper segregation of duties, proper authorization mechanism, hierarchy, approvals, physical controls. So like that, first, like external auditor, he will also need to verify adequate internal controls are there or not. And also, he must operate independent of the accounting staff. He should not be one of the accounting staff, independent. That means without any influence from the accounting department, he has to work. Next one, he should not involve in performance of executive functions. Most important thing, internal auditor should not be given executive responsibilities. You can't employ a person as internal auditor and ask him to pass the journal entries. You can't appoint an internal auditor and ask him to maintain the assets. So those kind of execution responsibilities should never be given to internal auditor. And also, he has to observe the facts and situation and bring them to the notice of authorities, which regarding various policies, any deficiencies if he finds out in the accounts department, in the finance department, he has to report it to regulatory authorities as well. And to work closely with the management and try to understand knowledge of various policies which are getting followed in the organization. Finally, he must always enjoy an independent status. So with regard to accounting function, these are the responsibilities of internal auditor. What are they? Number one, he will verify internal controls. Number two, he should be independent of accounting staff. Number three, no execution responsibility should be given to him. He has to bring to the notice of authorities if he finds any lapses and deficiencies, closely associate with the management. And finally, he must enjoy an independent status. That is anyhow repeated point. And not just verifying this, one more point they say, he should also give advisory inputs. What internal auditor should do, should also give advisory inputs to the management. Advisory inputs means, as I have told, not just telling where something is wrong, should also tell what can be done to overcome that problem. What can be done to improve the organization. That advisory inputs are also required to be kept in mind, are also required to be given by the internal auditor to the management or those charged with governance. Clear, everybody? Now going forward with the remaining concepts. So now we will see quickly question number 2, which is simply talking about what considerations to be kept in mind while developing internal audit plan. Same like statutory audit. Similarly, when you're working for internal audit also, like I have told, we have to spend a lot of time on planning. For statutory audit also we do it. Similarly, for the internal audit also, before we directly jump into the process of audit procedures and all, we have to spend significant amount of time even in planning of the internal audit. So while developing that internal audit plan, what are the various factors you are going to consider? So we are going to consider various factors like, first of all, as an internal auditor, we have to develop the audit plan after consultation with those charged with governance and management. So as I have told, audit committee or board of directors will sit with the internal auditors and then they decide the scope of work, right? Similarly, when the internal auditor wants to develop an audit plan, he has to consult with those charged with governance or management and then finalize the final audit plan. And whatever audit plan he has developed, he has to develop and document for each internal audit engagement in an efficient manner. And also, he should, in his plan, he should not just concentrate only on the financial matters, he should also concentrate on operational aspects also. That is the main difference between internal audit and external audit. External auditor only concentrates on financial matters, but internal auditor concentrates on financial as well as operational aspects. And various other factors which he needs to consider while developing a plan is, you have to study the risk. Similar to external auditor, he also should perform risk assessment procedures and try to understand the risk. And also, to prevent that risk, what kind of internal controls are getting implemented and how much effort you have to put it for each area, how many efforts you have to put it, how many days, how many hours, how many resources that you have to decide, and even risk appetite, risk taking capability of the organization. And you have to make sure that in your audit plan you are covering all auditable areas. Whatever is included in your scope, you should develop audit plan in such a manner that you are covering all that areas in the audit. You should cover all auditable areas. So do you find anything new here? Nothing new. So whatever factors those are basically considered by an external auditor while developing audit plan, the same factors more or less will be considered even by internal auditor also. Then this is the next most important concept. What and all areas will be verified by an internal auditor? So as an internal auditor, what and all areas you are supposed to cover in your internal audit? So as I've already mentioned, internal auditor will not concentrate only on financial matters. He will cover various aspects. So those aspects only they have listed out in a detailed manner. So just I will tell you broader areas. Inside the content is very general, very layman content will be there. So just we'll try to understand overall perspective of the answer. So basically in this question they are going to ask you what and all areas will be reviewed by internal auditor. Number one, he is going to verify internal control system. But the difference between external auditor and internal auditor is, external auditor also will verify internal controls, but he will verify internal controls which are mainly relating to accounting and finance area. So if I put it in other way around, external auditor will be more concerned with accounting controls. But internal auditor is not like that. He will not just verify internal controls in the area of finance and accounting. He will verify internal controls in all operational aspects. What kind of controls are there in production? What kind of controls are there in HR? What kind of controls are there in attendance? What kind of controls are there in the warehouse? What controls are there in the accounting department? So like that, that is one main point of difference. External auditor will be concerned only with accounting controls, but internal auditor will be concerned with all controls. That is the first thing he will do. He will verify internal control systems and procedures. And along with that, he will also verify custodianship and safeguarding of the assets. This is basically part of the internal controls only. So internal auditor is going to concentrate more on verifying whether assets are properly safeguarded. Safeguarded in the sense protected. Like proper physical controls are there or not, periodical verification is happening or not, segregation of duties are there or not, proper records relating to assets are maintained or not. When I say assets here, it includes all the current assets and fixed assets. Every kind of asset will come into picture here. So whether entities assets are properly safeguarded. When I say assets, it even includes intellectual properties also. So all kind of assets are properly protected or not, that also will be mainly verified by internal auditor. So first he is going to verify internal controls, then he will verify whether assets are properly safeguarded and protected. In addition to that, the internal auditor is also going to verify whether the entity is complying with all the laws, rules and regulations. So compliance with the laws and regulations, for example, if the client is a company, whether they are complying with the Companies Act, if it is a manufacturing entity, whether they are complying with pollution related laws and regulations or not, if it is a food related industry, whether they are complying with food related laws and regulations or not, so Factories Act. So the internal auditor is even going to concentrate more on verifying compliances with laws and regulations. Finally, he will verify review of relevance and reliability of information, all the information that is getting generated, be it accounting records, be it inventory records, be it financial statements, be it employee related data. So he is going to verify reliability of information. And we also know today all the information is not getting generated manually. Computer systems, softwares are getting used for the purpose of generation of information. So he is going to concentrate even on verification of that information systems, what kind of softwares the client is using, how they are integrated, is it an inbuilt software or outsourced software, are there any lapses in that software they are using, with what frequency data is getting generated, who are the IT people in the organization, who is managing that IT system, to whom which power was given. So he has to do an in-depth study of information systems as well. Then he will verify organizational structure in the sense hierarchy. So who are top level management, what are their responsibilities, who are management, what are their responsibilities, who are at operational level, who are at executive level, who are at the ground level. If a transaction has to happen, what is the flow? So something there will be called standard operating procedures, SOPs will be there. SOP in the sense nothing but documented form, how a transaction should happen. Like for example, if a purchase transaction has to happen, what are the various steps involved? Like purchase department has to make a purchase requisition note, it should go to the vendor, then it will go to negotiation team will finalize the vendor, then a purchase order will go, then the vendor will send the goods, verification should happen, GRN should be raised. So like that, for purchases one complete process will be there, that they will try to document in one piece of paper, and they save it. That we call it as SOPs. So these kind of organizational structure also the internal auditor is going to verify, basically hierarchy, procedure, policies. So all these things he is going to verify. And along with that, he will also verify whether the resources are utilized in a proper manner, whether the organization is utilizing the resources in such a way that there is no wastage, there is no leakage, there is no abnormal losses. For example, if the company is inputting the raw material, proper output they are getting or not, input output ratio which you study in the costing. And unnecessarily the company should not be recruiting the staff and keeping them on bench. This is what mainly happens in the IT company. IT company recruits so many people and they will keep them on bench. That means they will not allocate them any work, they will just keep it on bench. So that is not a proper utilization of resources. So be it physical resources, be it labor resources, be it capital resources, be it technological resources, there should not be wastage of the resources. Resources should be utilized in such a manner that maximum benefit is getting utilized. There should not be any abnormal losses. So that utilization of resources also will be verified. And finally, even whether the organization is achieving all its goals and objectives, the people are working, like the management is working for achievement of objectives, employees are working for the achievement of objectives, and those charged with governance is having that in mind. So when an organization is running, it should not be running for the personal benefits or personal objectives of one or two people. If there is an organization, overall organization will have their objectives, like vision, mission statement will be there. So whether the organization is working towards achievement of that goals and objectives or not, that also should be verified by internal auditor. If you pay close attention, this will never be included in the external auditor scope. External auditor has nothing to do with verifying whether objectives are achieved or not. Just he will verify financial information. So these are all the various areas which will be covered by internal auditor. So what are all they? Number one, he will verify internal control system. Number two, he will verify whether the assets are safeguarded or not. Number three, he will verify the compliance with the laws, regulations, or policies. Number four, he will check the reliability of the information systems. He will verify organizational structure, and he will verify proper utilization of resources and whether the organization is achieving its goals and objectives or not. And like external auditor, even internal auditor is also required to comply with some ethical requirements like integrity, objectivity, and independence. Even internal auditor also should be independent. He should be able to do the work without any influence from others. Whatever he feels as right, that he should be able to say. If he finds something as wrong, he should be able to say something as wrong. So he should work in an independent manner. But here, if you remember, the internal auditor can be an employee also, the internal auditor can be an external person also. Tell me who will be more independent? When external firm is appointed as an auditor, they will be more independent than when employee has been appointed as an internal auditor. But whatever it is, to the extent possible, internal auditor also should try to work in an independent manner. He should not get carried away by any kind of influences. Then he should be having integrity. Sir, what do you mean by integrity? Integrity means he should be honest, sincere, straightforward. He should not convey wrong statements. He should not associate himself with wrong information. So he should be truthful, honest, sincere, and straightforward. And objectivity, see, more or less objectivity and independence convey the same thing. Objectivity means no bias. There should not be any bias, there should not be any partiality. He should be able to do the work free from bias, free from partiality. So that nature we are going to call it as objectivity. So these things are not new to us. These ethical requirements will be even complied by external auditor. Similarly, internal auditor has also required to comply with these requirements: integrity, objectivity, and independence. Clear? Next. So what should be the qualities of internal auditor? If you want to become a good internal auditor, what kind of qualities you should possess? Number one, we should have good knowledge of accounting. We should have good knowledge of laws and regulations. We should have good knowledge of communication. Since as an internal auditor, we are required to communicate with so many people, you should have good communication skills. You should have good knowledge about the management policies. You should have knowledge of the client's business. You should know how the internal control systems will work. You should have proper drafting skills, because you have to prepare reports and all. You should have proper drafting skills. So very much common sense here. So what kind of qualities you have to possess? Like as you could see here, a few things I will try to highlight. You should have special expertise for evaluating internal control systems. You should have expertise. You should know how the internal controls will work. All that knowledge regarding internal controls you should have. And you must have accounting and financial expertise. Obviously, you should have very good knowledge of accounting and financial related matters. You should know the operations of the organization, technology, commercial practices. Today you have to do the audit in a digital environment. You should have a good knowledge of ERP systems, EDP systems, quantitative methods. This also you should have. And also you should, yeah, this once again, accounting software, ERP system, this you should have a good knowledge. You should know good about management policies. What kind of policies make a good management? What best policy should be there? You should have that knowledge as well. And also you should maintain confidentiality. You are expected to maintain confidentiality. Sir, what do you mean by confidentiality? Secrecy over the client's affairs. As a part of internal audit, you get to know a lot of confidential information regarding the client. You should not go and disclose it. If you have a YouTube channel, you should not go and post a video disclosing all the confidential information of the client. So you should be maintaining confidentiality. So these are basic qualities of an internal auditor. Then we have one more concept. What are the 5 steps of performing internal audit? If you want to perform internal audit engagement, what and all are various steps. This also will be similar to the functions of external auditor. Like if you remember, in the external audit, first thing what we do, risk assessment procedures we do. In the risk assessment procedures, what will happen? We will try to understand entity, environment, and its internal control. So to know about risk of material misstatement, that will be done even by the internal auditor as well. If you see, that is a step 1, you have to obtain knowledge of the business and its environment. Basically, risk assessment procedures you have to do. Sir, how can I obtain understanding regarding client's business? First, you have to go and conduct meetings with the stakeholders. You have to go and speak with management, those charged with governance, board of directors. You have to read their annual reports. So you have to go and conduct meetings with key stakeholders. And you should read various business documents like standard operating procedures, MOAs, AOAs, read that documents. And also you should try to understand technology landscape, what kind of softwares they are using, what kind of information systems they are using. Even you should try to understand regulatory landscape, what kind of laws and regulations applicable to your client. So basically you should try to do risk assessment procedures. This only we call it as risk assessment procedure. Okay, I have done risk assessment procedures. What you should do? You have to plan for audit, no? Develop a audit strategy, audit plan, all that things you have to do. So even you have to plan also, spend significant amount of time in planning. And also I have told what factors we are required to consider while developing plan, that we have already seen one question. And one more important thing, internal audit plan should be approved by audit committee or board of directors. There is no such requirement in the case of external audit. You need not get your plan approved by anybody in the case of external audit, but in the case of internal audit, you will develop a audit plan, but that audit plan should be approved by whom? Management or those charged with governance. That is, audit committee is there, audit committee will approve. If audit committee is not there, then board of directors must approve your audit plan. So after considering all the discussions, you have to spend significant amount of time on planning. And after conducting the planning, you are required to verify various kinds of information. No? To verify information, first you have to gather it. So gather all the information which you have to verify. Like for example, if you have to verify internal controls, first gather all the information regarding internal controls. You have to verify accounting data. First gather all that accounting data. You have to verify production data. You have to gather all that data. Check whether you have got complete data or not. So first gather all that information, whatever is required. Once you gather all that information, then what you should do? Have gathered all the required information, then what you should do? Perform your procedures, do the checking, do inspection, do observation, do verification, do analytical procedures, study the relationship, find out the misstatements. So that is what the next thing, you have to perform audit checks. Nothing but this is what in the external audit terminology I call it as performing further audit procedures, which includes compliance procedures, which includes substantive audit procedures. So that you have to do. From the external audit terminology, we call them as further audit procedures. From the internal audit terminology, we call them as audit checks. So whatever it is, try to perform analytical procedures, try to select the samples, try to perform audit procedures, try to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Like external auditor, we have to do all that audit checks. So I have told you 4 steps. What are they? Number 1, risk assessment procedures, nothing but obtain an understanding of entity and its environment. Number 2, spend amount of time on planning. Number 3, gather all the required information. Number 4, you have to perform test checks. Sorry, you have to perform audit checks. And finally, by performing this audit checks, what you will get? You will have all your findings. You will have observations. What you have to do to that observations? Report it. Report to the management and those charged with governance. Whatever your findings are there, that all you have to report. Not just reporting the findings, even you have to report suggestions also. You have to give suggestions also. You will report what are your observations, what mistakes you have found. But you should not stop with that. After reporting all your findings, you should also give suggestions for improvement. What actions can be taken by the management for overcoming that weaknesses? That also should be given. And you should not just stop with giving suggestions, you should also check how far that suggestions are implemented. How far that suggestions are implemented. Whether management has really implemented that rectification steps or not. That also you need to do a follow-up and give a report on that once again. So that's what they see here. Whatever finally your audit issues are there, you have to report all that internal audit issues. First, you have to prepare a draft report, and then you have to give it to the concerned management. So first, you have to give a draft audit report. Along with that, you should also develop management action plan. What management should do to overcome these problems? That action plan also you have to give, and you should verify whether management has implemented that steps or not. Not just giving them suggestions. We need to also check, we need to also review how far that steps are implemented by the management. And finally, whatever your final audit report is there, that you have to circulate it to the audit committee. Understood, everybody? Since we spoke about reporting, let us go to the reporting part here. What should be the format of the audit report? But before that, just have a quick recap of this question once again. So what are the various stages of the internal audit function? Number 1, risk assessment. Number 2, planning. Number 3, gathering data. Number 4, performing checks. Number 5, reporting of all your findings. Since I spoke about reporting, let me talk about the reporting here. What should be the contents of the audit report and all? Yes, so this is one. With this last question, I will try to wind up this chapter. So what should be the reporting requirements? So first thing, reporting. So first, there will be 2 kinds of report here. After the completion of internal audit, there will be 2 kinds of report. Number 1, one is periodical reporting. First I will talk about periodical reporting. Sir, what is periodical reporting? For example, if internal auditor has been appointed once in a quarter or once in 6 months or once in a year, the chief internal auditor will give a report on the entire quarter. For the entire internal audit process, he will give one report on a periodic basis. In addition to that, after completion of each and every audit task, also a separate report will be given. Like for example, when I say internal audit is happening for Reliance Industries Limited. It is having 10 branches, it is having some 15 divisions which are required to be done. So now what will happen is, once internal audit of one department is done, a separate report will be given. Once a internal audit of one branch is done, for that branch, separate internal audit report will be given. So like this, as and when each task is getting completed, a separate report will be given. In addition to that, after the completion of entire audit, like for example, in one quarter, entire internal audit got completed. So at the end of this quarter, a consolidated audit report will be given for the entire audit process. So like that, 2 reports will be there. One is after completion of each audit assignment. Number 2 is overall report on periodic basis. So two types of reports will be given by internal auditor. And what should be the elements of internal audit? What and all contents should be there in the internal audit report? So there should be a few contents, like you have to explain main elements, key elements of the internal audit report will be, you have to speak in your internal audit report regarding your objectives, scope and approach. What is your objective as an internal auditor? What is your scope? What is your approach? That you have to say a few words. And you should say that internal audit has been conducted as per standards on internal audit. You should mention the fact in your internal audit report that you have done that internal audit as per the standards on internal audit. Then you have to give a key observations. What are your observations from the entire internal audit process? You have to give a summary of all your observations. And along with that, as I have told you, not just observations, you have to give summary of corrective actions. What actions have to be taken by the management? That also should be given. And what kind of assurance you are giving? That also you have to speak about it. And when it comes to format of the audit report, there is no specific format. In SA 700 for external audit, we have a specific format, but like that, we don't have any specific format for internal audit report. It is completely up to the professional judgment of the auditor. It is completely up to the professional judgment of the auditor. So the internal auditor will sit with the client and finalize how the reporting should happen. So there is no specific format when it comes to internal audit report. It is completely on the basis of professional judgment of the internal auditor and discussions with the client. But a few common points, a few common contents which will be generally there, a few common paragraphs which will be there in the internal audit reporters. So there will be, like as you could see here, the typical internal audit report should include the following. What should be typically included in the internal audit report? Basically, a normal internal audit report will contain these contents. What contents? You have to give one audit scope paragraph. You have to talk about audit period. You have to give an executive summary like we have seen. Then you have to critical findings, whatever are there, that summary you have to give. Detailed audit findings which are impacting the business and root causes. If you find any issues which are having a deep impact on the business, that you have to explain. Rating of highlighted issues. Even you have to give rating for the issues also. For example, I have found out various issues in the purchase department, but all issues might not be very significant. Some issues are very highly important, some issues are moderate, some issues are low in importance. So that rating also you have to give. And in addition to that, you have to give recommendations also. As I have told, never stop with reporting only findings for internal auditor. We have to even give recommendations. And along with that, what responses you have received from the management. You told rectification actions, you gave suggestions. What responses you have got? Did the management give you any timeline? Did the management say, okay sir, these suggestions, this suggestion number 1 we will implement within 1 month, suggestion number 2 we will implement within 15 days? So what replies you have received from the management, that also you have to include it. And like external auditor, you have to also maintain documentation. Even internal auditor is also required to maintain the documentation like external auditor. So this is what the major concept relating to internal audit. We have some other questions also in this chapter, but these are very general and vague questions that you can go through it. When it comes to conceptual clarity, this is what the major conceptual clarity regarding the concept of internal audit. Hope you guys are able to understand it. So since we are done with understanding the concept of internal audit, now we will try to discuss one of the related standards of the internal audit, which is SA 610. So let us try to understand this concept. Let us try to revise quickly the concept of SA 610, which is almost related to the concept of internal audit. So once again, here I have a summary for you. This entire standard has been summarized in this form in 2 pages. So this will be, you know where to get it. So just visit our website www.fingansacademy.com, go to resources section. There I will upload it. You will be able to find it there. So what does this standard talk about? What exactly is the standard about? So if you pay close attention, if you look at the title of the standard says something like this: using the work of internal auditor. Using the work of internal auditor. From the title, let us try to understand what exactly this standard is talking about. As I have told, SA, standards on audit, are actually giving guidance regarding external audit. And SA 610 title says that using the work of internal auditor. So from the title, I want you to understand one thing. I'm asking you one question. I expect an answer from you. So from the title which says using the work of internal auditor, they are trying to say someone is trying to use somebody's work. Using the work of internal auditor, from that title, this standard is trying to say someone is going to make use of someone's work. I want to know whose work is getting used. Whose work is getting used and who is using that work. Whose work is getting used and who is using that work. I will give you options also. Number 1, internal auditor using the work of external auditor. Number 2, external auditor using the work of internal auditor. Number 3, internal auditor using the work of management. Number 4, management making use of internal auditor's work. So what do you think this standard is talking about? Who is going to make use of whose work? So from the title, it is very clear. Using the work of internal auditor. Whose work is getting used? That is very much clear. Internal auditor's work is getting used. Now, who is using it? Standards on auditing are going to give guidance to the external auditor. So this standard is going to talk about external auditor making use of internal auditor's work. What does this 610 deal about? external auditor making use of internal auditor's work. Sir, can the external auditor make use of the internal auditor's work? Can the external auditor make use of the internal auditor's work? Let us keep aside what the standard is telling, but let us think practically. See, as I have told, external auditor only will be concerned about financial information. But internal auditor is, the scope of internal auditor is very wider. He covers various operational aspects. Along with that, he will also verify financial information. So external auditor is going to verify only financial information, but internal auditor is trying to verify all the various operating activities. Along with that, he is also trying to verify financial information. So basically, whatever work external auditor has to do, that work is already done by internal auditor. Whatever work external auditor is required to perform, that work is already getting done by internal auditor. So in some areas, whatever external auditor is supposed to do and whatever internal auditor is supposed to do, both are same in certain areas. So when whatever work which external auditor is required to do is already done by internal auditor, do you think as an external auditor, can I make use of the internal auditor's work? Practically, it seems okay. Practically, it seems okay. Why? Because whatever work you are doing, the same work he is also doing. So yes, practically you can make use of the internal auditor's work. Do you think standard permits it? Yes, standard also permits it. SA 610 also permits external auditor to make use of the internal auditor's work if he wants. It is not a compulsion, since whatever you are required to do, that work is already getting done by internal auditor. If you want, if external auditor wants, you can use it. We don't have any objection. That's what SA 16 is telling. So SA 610 has given the permission for the external auditor to make use of the internal auditor's work, but however, it is not mandatory. If at all external auditor decides to make use of the internal auditor's work, what precautions he has to take, in what different ways you can make use of the internal auditor's work, what are the different approaches you have to follow, to which matters you have to be careful, what are the things you have to be cautious about, that all guidance is provided under SA 610. So if the external auditor decides to make use of the internal auditor's work, then SA 610 will come into picture and will give you guidance what exactly you are supposed to do when you decided to make use of the internal auditor's work. See, this standard is very simple if we understand one simple concept. If you understand one simple concept, this standard is going to be damn easy, which is external auditor is going to make use of internal auditor's work in two ways. External auditor can make use of internal auditor's work in two ways, which is using the work of internal audit function, and using the internal auditors for direct assistance. Using the internal auditors for direct assistance. If you understand the difference between the two, for the sake of our convenience, I will say this is type 1 usage, this is type 2 usage. So if we can understand what is the difference between type 1 usage and type 2 usage, standard is going to be damn simple. So let us first focus our time on understanding this. So external auditor can make use of the internal auditor's work in two ways. Number one, using the work of internal audit function. Number two, using the internal auditors for direct assistance. Now, what is the difference between the two? I will try to explain in a very simple layman terms. See, take for example, you are conducting audit of X Limited. You wanted to verify whether income tax provisions are calculated correctly or not. As an external auditor, you wanted to obtain audit evidence whether income tax provision has been calculated properly or not. But you don't have enough of time. You don't have enough of resources. You don't have enough of time. As an external auditor, you are running very tight on schedule. You have no enough of time. Very scarcity of time is there. So you wanted to obtain audit evidence regarding whether income tax provision has been calculated correctly or not. But you came to know that this verification has already been done by internal auditor. Internal auditors, as a part of their internal audit assignment, they have already verified whether income tax provision is correctly calculated or not. They have already verified it and they have given their observations in the internal audit report. Internal audit has already verified income tax provisions and they have included their observations in the internal audit report. So as an external auditor, what I thought is, let me do one thing. Since I don't have enough of time to verify income tax provision, I will open the internal audit report, which will be very detailed report. So I will open the internal audit report. In that internal audit report, I will go to that particular section where internal auditors are telling their observations regarding income tax provision. I opened that respective page. I started reading the observations of the internal auditor regarding income tax provision. They gave some one page of information regarding income tax provision. By reading all that page, my conclusion is internal auditors are telling income tax provisions are appropriately calculated. What internal auditors spoke about income tax provision, they have told income tax provision has been correctly calculated as per the provisions of the Income Tax Act. So what I thought is, okay, I will do one thing. Since I don't have time to perform audit procedures by myself, I will rely whatever internal auditors have told in their auditor's report. See, since internal auditors in their internal audit report, they have told that there is nothing wrong regarding income tax provision, I will also come to the same conclusion, whatever internal auditors have told. So this we call it as, this type of usage we call it as using the work of internal audit function. This type of usage we are going to call it as what? Using the work of internal audit function, where as an external auditor, you are using the work of internal auditor which is already performed. Internal auditors have already done some work. They have given their observations in the internal audit report. And as an external auditor, you want to use the work which is already performed by internal auditors. This kind of usage I'm going to call it as type 1 usage, or using the work of internal audit function. So now what is direct assistance? What is using the work of internal auditors for direct assistance? Here I will give you one more example to make you understand this. Take for example, once again, there is a client X Limited. In this client X Limited, you wanted to, as an external auditor, you wanted to obtain audit evidence regarding internal controls. Whether internal controls in the area of fixed assets are working effectively or not, you want to obtain audit evidence. But you don't have enough of time and resources. You don't have enough of time and resources. So what you are doing is, you are going to the internal auditors. You went to the internal audit team and told, boss, as you all know, we are external auditors. We need to obtain audit evidence whether internal controls in the area of fixed assets are working effectively or not. But we don't have enough of time and resources. You do one thing. Since you are also internal auditors, you also know audit procedures, you also know importance of audit, you also know how to obtain audit evidence. Why don't you perform these procedures on our behalf? We are required to verify internal controls. We are required to perform some procedures, but we request you to perform it on our behalf. Now you do the work. I will direct, as an external auditor, I will direct you. I will give you instructions what needs to be done. I will supervise you. If at all you are facing any trouble, I will help you out. And after you have done the work, I will review your work also. So in this case, I'm going and requesting the internal auditor to perform some work for me now. In the type 1 usage, I use the work which is already performed by internal auditors. But in the type 2 usage, I am going to the internal auditors. In the case of direct assistance, I am going to the internal auditors and asking them to perform the procedures now. The procedures which I am supposed to perform, I am asking the internal auditors to perform by them, and I will give them instructions. I will direct them, I will supervise them, I will review them. So under the direction, supervision, review of the external auditor, I am getting the procedures performed by internal auditors. So I'm not using their past work, I'm getting their work done. That we call it as direct assistance. Whereas if you are already using the work which is performed by internal auditors, that is simply if you are referring to the internal audit reports, that we call it as type 1 work, which is using the work of internal audit function. If you are able to understand this too, then standard has been mostly completed. So what is the summary till now? Whatever we have discussed, yes, external auditor can make use of the internal auditor's work. It is not a compulsion. It is up to the choice of the external auditor. And if at all he wants to make use of the internal auditor's work, he can do it in two ways. Number one, using the work of internal audit function. Number two, direct assistance. Now what the rest of the standard says is, if you want to make use of internal audit function, if you are going for type 1 usage, what factors you are required to consider? If you are going for type 2 usage, what factors you are required to consider? So like standard says, if you are using type 1 usage, if you want to use the internal audit function, what you should verify. So first what you should do is to decide whether I can make use of the past work of the internal auditors or not. So first thing what you need to do is three factors you have to evaluate. So what is the organizational status given to the internal auditors? That means what level of independence has been given to the internal auditors? Are they permitted to do their work in an independent manner? So to whom they are reporting? Are they given the supreme power? Are they reporting to the top level management, or they are reporting to the low level management? Nothing but I will try to understand first what is the status given to the internal auditors. If I'm going for type 1 usage, three factors I have to evaluate whether I can use type 1 work or not. To determine that, I have to consider three factors. Number one, what is the status which is given to internal auditors? Are they permitted to act in an objective manner or not? Without any bias, internal auditors are able to do their work or not. Number two, I will try to analyze competence, whether internal auditors are competent enough. Whatever internal audit team is there within the company, are they competent? Are they capable? Number three, I will verify whether the internal auditors did the work in a systematic and disciplined manner. I will try to verify whether internal auditors done their work in a systematic and disciplined manner. So I have to analyze these three factors. Whether internal auditor has been given appropriate status in the organization to act in an objective manner. Is he competent enough? Is he capable enough? Did he apply systematic and disciplined approach? If I got positive responses for all these three questions, if For these three questions, I got positive responses. Yes, he has been given proper organizational status. He has been given top powers. He has been treated at par with management. So he will be able to do the work in a more objective manner, in a more unbiased manner. I came to know he is competent. He is very much capable. His internal audit team is very strong. They have good knowledge. They are all professionals. They have a proper approach. Then I will be very comfortable using the type 1 work. Third thing I have to analyze it, systematic and disciplined approach. Did the internal auditors do their work in a systematic manner? Did they have proper audit documentation? Did they properly plan their internal audit? Did they consider all the risk factors? So if I got positive responses for all these three things, I will comfortably go and make use of the type 1 usage. I will simply go and use the internal auditors report. If for any of this question I got non-satisfactory responses, like I came to know that internal auditors are not independent, they don't have enough of capability, they did not properly do their internal audit, do you think will I be comfortable in using the internal auditors work there? 100% not. So that's what they say here. If you see, if you want to make use of the internal audit function, if you want to make use of type 1 usage, what factors you have to evaluate? Number one, you have to evaluate what is the organizational status and whether policies and procedures support the objectivity, support the unbiasedness of the internal auditor. What is the competence of the internal auditor? Did he apply a systematic and disciplined approach? For these three questions, if I got positive responses, I will accept it. I will use a type 1 work. For these three questions, if I got negative responses, then I will not use a type 1 work. Like if you see here, circumstances when the work of the internal audit function cannot be used, when you should not use a type 1 work. When the function's organizational status and relevant policies and procedures do not support objectivity, or the system lacks competence, or they do not apply systematic and disciplined approach. Simply for the three questions, if I got negative responses, then I will not make use of the type 1 usage. Clear? And you will be able to find in the standard how you will evaluate objectivity, how you will come to know whether internal auditors are having objectivity or not. Like I will check what is the organizational status given to them and whether those charged with governance are involved in employing the internal auditors. Did the management put any restriction on the scope of the internal auditors? Is the internal audit function free of any conflicting responsibilities? So I will analyze these factors. From that, I will come to know whether I will try to analyze these factors. By that, I will come to know whether the internal auditor is objective or not. Similarly, you have to check competence. How you will check internal auditors are competent or not? So I will check whether they are properly resourced. Is there a strong team? Reasonable number of people are there in the internal audit department or not? Whether the internal auditors are properly trained and whether they have technical and proficiency in auditing or not. I will also check whether they possess all the required knowledge of applicable financial reporting framework. If I got positive responses for all this, then I can decide that yes, internal audit team is competent. Third factor which I need to evaluate whether internal auditors did a systematic and disciplined approach. Sir, how I will come to know whether internal auditors did their work in a systematic and disciplined manner or not? So I will try to consider, is there a documented procedures, whatever they have done for all that proper documentation is there or not? Are they following quality control policies and procedures or not? So by analyzing these factors, I will come to know whether they have followed a systematic and disciplined approach or not. So for these three factors, if I got positive responses, I will use type 1 work. If I got negative responses, I will not use the type 1 work. Similarly, if you want to use the internal auditors for direct assistance, here also some factors you have to consider. Whether I can allocate the work to the internal auditors or not. See, as I have told you, under direct assistance, I will ask the internal auditors to perform the procedures now. I will not use their past work. I will ask them to do the procedures on my behalf. So before I can decide whether I can allocate the work to the internal auditors for direct assistance or not, before I take that decision, here also some factors I will consider. Sir, what factors you will consider? Here also I will consider objectivity and independence. If I allocate the work to the internal auditors, are they able to carry out the work in an independent manner? Will they be able to carry out the work in an objective manner? That I have to analyze. Second one, here also I need to check competence. Here also I need to check what? Competence. If I allocate the work to the internal auditors, are they in a position to do the work in a capable manner? Are they capable to do the work? Do they have all the skill, training, knowledge, whatever it is to do this work? Do they have all that skill or not? That also I have to analyze. Here, this third factor will not come. Whether they applied a systematic and disciplined approach, that will not come. Why? Because I'm not using their past work. Now I will give them directions. Now I will do the supervision of them. Now I will review their work. So that's why I need not check whether their past work is having systematic and disciplined approach. So if I have to decide whether I can allocate the internal auditors for direct assistance or not, two factors I have to evaluate. Number one, if I allocate the work to them, will they be in a position to do the work in an objective and independent manner? Do they have sufficient capability? For these two questions, if I got positive responses, well and good, I will allocate the work to the internal auditors. For these two questions, if any of the question, if I got negative response, like I decided that if I allocate the work to the internal auditors, They will not be able to do it in an independent manner. If I allocate the work to the internal auditors, they don't have capability to do that work, then I will not allocate the work to the internal auditors, then I will not use type 2 usage. So same factors they have told here. So if you want to make use of the type 2 work, here also two factors we will evaluate. One is level of independence and objectivity, and whether they have capability or not. When you are prohibited from using type 2 work, for these two questions, if I got negative responses, like I came to know that there are threats to objectivity or they do not have sufficient capabilities. And one more thing, standard says, if you want to allocate work to the internal auditors for direct assistance, you can do it if you got positive responses for this two. Like you came to know that if I allocated the work to the internal auditors, they can do it in an independent manner, they are also capable. Now you can happily go and allocate the work to the internal auditors. But one thing you have to remember, certain areas you should not allocate. Even though you came to know internal auditors are independent, even though you came to know they are capable, you allocate the work to the internal areas, but certain areas you don't allocate. Other areas you can allocate. Sir, what are those certain areas which I can't allocate, even though they are independent, even though they are objective, even though they are competent? Certain areas you please don't allocate to the internal auditors. Which areas, sir? Wherever there are significant judgments like estimates, provisions, assumptions, these areas you don't allocate to the internal auditors. Why? Because these areas have a high chances of misstatement in the estimate, assumptions and all. Management can play with them. That is a high risky area. Don't allocate that area for direct assistance. Similarly, areas where there are high risk of material misstatement. For example, you are conducting audit of a IT company. You felt that in the revenue recognition of IT company, the risk of material misstatement is very high. Will you go and allocate that area to the internal auditors? Don't do it. Similarly, if you came to know work with which internal auditors are already involved. If you came to know that in the preparation of some data, internal auditors are already involved. You came to know that income tax provision has been calculated by the internal auditors themselves. Don't allocate the same work to the internal auditors. Why? Because that will be a self-review threat. So three kinds of areas you don't allocate to internal auditors. Number one, wherever there are significant judgments. Number two, high risk of material misstatement. Number three, the work in which internal auditors are already involved in the preparation. These three areas you don't allocate it. Remaining areas you can allocate it. And one more thing also, standard says you have to obtain written agreement. If you want to make use of internal auditors for direct assistance, you need to obtain written agreement from two people. Number one, you need to obtain written agreement from the management that they will permit the internal auditors to work for us and they will not interfere when the internal auditors are working for us. Why? Because for the internal auditors, ultimately remuneration will be paid by management. So internal auditors will follow whose instructions? Management instruction or external auditor instructions? They will give priority to whom? They will give priority to management. So that's why I will go and ask the management, sir, I'm going to use your internal auditors for 2-3 days. You should not interfere in between. And you should not allocate them some other work at that point of time. So ask the management to give a written confirmation that they will not interfere. They will permit the internal auditors to work for us and they will not interfere. Similarly, you should also obtain written agreement from the internal auditor that if at all, they have to keep certain information confidential. As an internal auditor, since I'm allocating some work to you, I will tell you some important things regarding audit. I should ask the internal auditors to give me a confirmation that he will maintain confidentiality. He will not go and disclose that to the client. And also, I should ask a confirmation from the internal auditors that if they face any threat to their independence or objectivity, they should come and intimate me. That's all. So these are two confirmations, one from management, one from internal auditor, you have to obtain. And finally, sir, as an external auditor, the standard has given me permission to make use of the internal auditor's work. So take for example, I am an external auditor, I made use of internal auditor's work. Either type 1 or type 2, I made use of the internal auditor's work. Now, because of using this work, so for example, I'm conducting audit, I wanted to verify information regarding income tax provision. Since I don't have enough of time, I use the internal audit report. And I concluded that, okay, financial statements are free from material misstatements. If tomorrow it was found out that in the income tax provision, there was a huge amount of fraud, now who will be held responsible? Ultimately, external auditor only will be held responsible. Even though if you make use of the internal auditor's work, tomorrow if your opinion has gone wrong, you can't shift the blame onto internal auditor. Entire consequences have to be faced by external auditor only. So you can't shift the blame onto internal auditor. The responsibility of external auditor will not be reduced by using the internal auditor's work. Sir, standard is giving permission. Yes, standard is giving permission, but they did not make it a mandatory. No, as I've already told you, it is only a choice. If you want, you use it. If you want to take that extra risk, you use it. But just because you made use of the internal auditor's work, you can't shift the blame onto internal auditor. You only have to face all the consequences. So it's your choice. It's up to you whether you want to take extra risk or not. Why? Because standard did not make any compulsion. You want to use it and face the consequences. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. Be on a safer side. It's up to you. Clear? So this is what this paragraph says. And finally, you have to include certain things in the documentation. In your audit documentation, you have to include certain things. As an external auditor, if you made use of the internal auditor's work, in your documentation, you have to use certain things. Like if you used type 1 usage, you have to document how you have decided on the organizational status regarding objectivity, how you have decided they are competent, how you have decided they have applied a systematic and disciplined approach. So on what basis, what information you have got regarding this, that you have to document. Similarly, if you are deciding to use for type 2 usage, then you have to include in your documentation what information you have considered for deciding objectivity and independence, how you have decided capabilities, that you have to document. Along with that, whatever written agreement that you are getting from the management and whatever written agreement that you are getting from the internal auditors, these things also should go and sit in your documentation. So this is what some extra things which has to be included in the documentation. So you can refer this documentation paragraph for extra clarity. Clear, everybody? So this is what regarding SS610. As I have told, this summary will be uploaded in the website. There you can download it and you can use it for your revision. Clear? So with this, we are successfully done with the revision of internal audit chapter along with SS610. Hope you guys are able to enjoy it.